Welcome to the TCM Teach podcast, business podcast designed exclusively for acupuncturists and Chinese medicine herbalists who are ready to build thriving, sustainable businesses. I'm Matthew Sabi Smith, licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, professor, coach, and entrepreneur, and I've spent years helping practitioners like you not only master your clinical skills, but also expand practices with herbs, supplements, and wellness products. So without running into costly legal pitfalls, this is kind of an important topic. Today we're diving into an area that can feel confusing, but is absolutely essential if you want to sell herbs or products. You want to have licensing and legal considerations when it comes to this. Selling products can create an additional revenue stream, which is so important in business. We want to diversify our revenue streams. And you could serve your patients better as a result. You can have something right on the shelf to give them right away. There's a convenience factor there as well. But it also comes with specific responsibilities, regulations, and protections that you want to have in place. So we'll get started right after my quick disclaimer. So please remember, I'm simply a practitioner here to support you on your journey. The information shared in this podcast is intended for educational and learning purposes only and should not be taken as professional, legal, or financial advice. For guidance specific to your business, please consult with the appropriate licensed professional. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Let's get started. Why selling products isn't just business as usual. In our last episode, we were talking about making sure that you adjust your business based on what coverages you might need. So we're going to talk about some of the legal implications of this a little further. And please remember in the podcast, generally, whenever I am speaking about herb sales, generally, I'm talking about products. I'm not talking about just making a decoction for someone, in the sense of putting some raw herbs together and sending them on their way. That's typically covered in your practice, depending on your state, obviously, and if you have the training to do so. But we can make significantly more revenue if we properly prepare products ahead of time, and we can have a nice markup price to them. So we're going to talk about all of this and more as we continue in this podcast. So when you prescribe herbs in a treatment, you're acting under your practitioner license, like I was saying. But when you sell products that are retail, herbs, supplements, teas, wellness items, you step into, this is a different legal role now. If we're being really detailed and diligent about business, this is not just giving someone herbs and sending them on their way. This is, you have a whole other arm to your business where you can sell so much more. There's just more things to consider that you want to think about when selling products. So each role does have different responsibilities and legal oversight. So I want you to understand that you must know where clinical care ends and where retail commerce begins. I have seen this crossed quite often. I had made this mistake in the past. I didn't have any negative issues as a result. However, it taught me that, there is a gap here that I was not taught that other people need to be taught. So if you're not sure, or if you've never heard about this, definitely stay tuned into this episode because we're going to talk about it. So what are some of the core licenses and permits that you're going to need or maybe have to consider? So you're going to have to think about a resale license or seller's permit. So this is required in most states to sell retail products. This allows you to purchase products wholesale without paying sales tax, and it requires you to collect and remit sales tax from patients and customers. This is pretty common if you sell herbs in most states. If you have sales tax, you probably already have a permit to have sales tax. It's different in every state, so you want to check state specific. But if you're getting like a resale license of something, you have to talk to a lawyer and your accountant about these things to make sure that you're covered in your specific area. But I do want to at least bring these things to the surface so that you know what to look for. So obviously we have the resale license or seller's permit, the ability to sell stuff. And that way you don't have to pay sales tax if you're reselling something else. So what is business license? This is typically issued by your city or county, and it's legally required to operate any retail business. This is an in-person business if you're selling it retail or wherever you're functioning from, wherever you're shipping products from, even if you're online, for example, you are legally required to operate under a business license. That's pretty straightforward. This also actually is going to be required just to have your business. But additionally, something new that has changed. So this recording is happening September 2025, that digital products are now being taxed in a lot of states. So you want to check and make sure that you have some type of software or something tracking that as well. It's not just physical products, okay? So anyway, resale license and business license. State or federal requirements. Some states require additional permits if you sell certain supplements or food grade items. Very state specific. And if selling online across state lines, FDA labeling and interstate commerce laws may apply. I'm not saying you have to be cleared by the FDA. I'm saying you have to have FDA labeling, which we will talk about eventually. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty easy to look up. And then Board of Acupuncture considerations. Some boards restrict how herbs can be sold, patient only versus retail to the general public. So you want to check your State Practice Act and board rules. So let me give you an example. Not all practitioners are able to function under just an LLC. We talked about this in a previous episode. Some of them require a PLLC, Professional Limited Liability Company. The PLLC is a limited liability company that is protected to an extent, but is connected to a license. And since it's connected to a license, the scope of that business is what the license can do. So, in the event you want to sell different types of products, but they may not necessarily correlate to your licensed practice, you may actually want to consider separating into a regular LLC to do retail. Again, I can't give you all of that advice. That's something to talk to your lawyer and accountant about, but you just don't want to compromise yourself on either side, being an LLC or PLLC. You might actually have a little more leeway if you live in a state where you can function under an LLC. So definitely note that in your research. So if you have a regular LLC, you might have a larger scope where it's just where business is not just based on your license, whereas a PLLC, it might be. So Board of Acupuncture considerations, just some boards restrict how these things can be sold. So you want to check. You want to check with your State Practice Act and board rules. And specifically business. Do you live in a business-friendly state? There are a lot of nuances to this, but I don't want you to be afraid of this either. This is why I wanted to create this information for you, because I have had to learn so much and read so much of this on my own because I actually had no one to teach me. So that is why we are here. So what are FDA and labeling basics? What are some good things, good practices for us to understand? Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. This is something that sets the framework for herbal supplements. All of our herbs fall under the category of dietary supplements, herb supplements. They don't fall under the category of drugs. Obviously, some of our favorite herbs like ma huang, for example, might be heavily regulated, which can be a little hard to get because they've been labeled as potentially dangerous. However, with a trained herbalist, they wouldn't be, but it just makes it, there's two sides to this story. It makes it a little harder for us to get ma huang. However, it makes it easier for us to sell herbs to the general public. You just might not want your personal license connected to that. So sometimes separation can actually be advantageous for you. So labels must include supplement facts panel, ingredient list, manufacturer, distributor information, and allergen disclosures if applicable. Think of this as covering yourself. If the information is on there, then the client should know what they're taking. You cannot make disease claims. You cannot say you cure anything. You even know this in practice. You can't technically say you cure anything. For example, cures asthma. You can't say that. A supplement can't say that. You can make structure and function claims. For example, instead of saying cures asthma, you could say supports healthy lung function. Pretty straightforward. If private labeling or creating your own formulas, strict compliance is required. You want to have good manufacturing practices in place. If you don't have the ability to make that happen, you really want to think about how you're creating this product. And there are factories and places that can do this for you, and you just pay them for their services. So you can actually go to a CGMP, Certified Good Manufacturing Practices facility, say, hey, can you sign this non-disclosure agreement? Thanks. I want you to make this. Let me know how much it's going to cost for this amount of product. Something you can consider. I know I'm going over this quickly because I'm introducing it. We are going to talk about this more, so stay tuned. Next, liability and insurance considerations. This is a big one because you're going from if you mess up the malpractice, which you obviously have covered under your license, but now it could be retail. So if you're going into retail and you're trying to give people things that are internal, for example, for the general public, you want to be careful. You want to make sure you cover all your bases. So malpractice insurance is not going to be enough when you're selling products. Please understand this. Product liability insurance. This is something that's going to protect you if someone has an adverse reaction to something that you made ahead of time. So, for example, you made this really great formula and you got product liability insurance on it. You have, say, 100 units in your clinic. This is an example of a product. You have 100 units ready to give to patients. It's not you're giving them raw herbs. These are some distinctions you want to be careful of. So it's essential if you sell retail, in person or online, you want to have product liability insurance. If you private label or manufacture your own formulas, you have 100 units ready to give to a patient, product liability insurance is something you want to consider. If you stock products in your clinic, like I was just saying, product liability insurance is something you might want to consider. So you want to think about proper storage, temperature, humidity, expiration tracking, and recall procedures. Do this before it's a problem. Have strong protection in place. I'm going to repeat this just to make sure that you understood it. Proper storage, temperature and humidity, understanding what that is. If you have a product that can go moldy and a product goes moldy and is given to a patient and they get sick, if you don't have coverage for that, you're going to be in trouble. Do your best to track everything. So expiration tracking. There's guidelines. There's going to be guidelines of when it expires or a certain shelf life. You'll even notice on patent formulas that are commonplace in TCM clinics, they're going to have an expiration date. Even if it doesn't expire, they're going to have an expiration date. That could be the argument made with things like tinctures, for example, because they're in alcohol. Maybe they don't expire. It's going to have an expiration date. So maybe you just take it home and use it for yourself instead. You have to take the loss. You can't try and sell that. Just check to see what the shelf life might be. I think, don't quote me on this, it might be around 2 years typically for things like T-pills. And then recalls. How are you going to do a recall? What's that procedure going to look like? Are you keeping good records to see if someone had an adverse reaction or you need to do a recall? How are you going to make that happen? Next, common mistakes practitioners make. Unfortunately, selling herbs without a resale permit. That's illegal and risky because that could come back to bite you later. Make sure you have a resale permit. Assuming malpractice covers product sales. Guess what? It doesn't. I was not taught that in school either, so that's why I'm telling you here. Not charging or remitting sales tax properly. I have made this mistake once before in the past too. That's how I learned it. This is why I'm telling you these things. If you are not on time with sales tax, depending on the state, and sometimes it can get out of hand where you're responsible for multiple states, make sure that you're charging sales tax and you have the ability to charge sales tax, so you have a license to do so, and make sure that you're paying the state the sales tax that you gained. If you're not charging for it, it's going to come out of your own pocket. So make sure that you're collecting and giving sales tax. The key here is making sure that you're on time. Or if you have a missed payment, sometimes even if it's zero, and you didn't sell anything, you might still have to file quarterly with the state saying 0. If you live in a non-sales tax state, good for you, you don't have to worry about this. Most states have sales tax. Make sure you're on time. Do not be late. Storing herbs incorrectly or past expiration dates, just throw them away, or if you think they're good, take them home for yourself. Do not sell them. Making disease claims on labels, websites, or handouts. Don't do that. Technically, that's not legal anyway. You could say, can support lung function. You can't say cures asthma. So what are some practical steps for you from now? You can check your state acupuncture board rules about herbal sales. Apply for a resale license and business license if you plan to sell retail. Confirm sales tax requirements for your state and online if applicable. There are specific softwares in place that can track it for you. You pay them and they track it for you. And sometimes they can even register in a certain state if you hit Nexus. Don't worry about this now. This is more advanced. We can talk about this later. Your accountant can help you with these things too. Just to make sure everyone gets the sales tax that they deserve. The states, I mean. Review all product labels and marketing for compliance. Contact your insurance provider to add product liability coverage. Maybe the insurance provider you have has product liability coverage. If they don't, you could just get a new policy with someone else. Shop around. Don't go for the first quote. Set up a product tracking system for inventory, expiration dates, and recalls. It's very important. It is very good practicing here to have inventory counting, expiration dates, and recalls. There are some really good systems out there that can help you track these things. And keep a compliance binder with permits, licenses, insurance, and standard operating procedures. How you run everything. This can help you in the long run in the event there is an issue. So what is the TCM lens on selling products? In TCM, we understand the importance of balance and boundaries. So selling herbs and products without proper structures can be like prescribing without diagnosis. That's dangerous. Again, I'm talking more from the product standpoint. This isn't just herbs. This is most products that can be created. This is why this applies to everybody. You want to make sure you have compliance, licensing, and insurance. Again, going back to Wei Qi, the Wei Qi of your business. Create protective boundaries. When your business has strong Wei Qi, it's safe, it's resilient, and capable of serving more people. So I'm going to leave you with this. Selling herbs and products can be a powerful way to expand your practice and help more people, but only if done with care and compliance. This is going to help you sleep at night. Think of licensing and legal considerations as preventative medicine for your business. They keep your practice healthy, protected, and sustainable. So I've created a resource called the Herbal Sales Compliance Guide, which walks you through the key licenses, permits, and protections you want to consider before selling herbs or products in your practice or online. So you'll find it in the membership. And in our next episode, we are going to be talking about HIPAA and patient privacy compliance simplified. So until then, thanks for tuning in to the TCM Teach podcast. And until next time, we'll see you. 谢谢。